Hello, this is Bree Bonchet, and welcome to the second Healing Narcissistic Abuse Virtual Summit in honor of World Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Day. This event is brought to you by Free From Toxic and Trauma Recovery University. It's our joint mission to raise awareness about the damaging impact of narcissistic abuse and bring you the most informative and empowering information from the industry's leading experts. Athena Moberg and I are so glad you have chosen to join us and hope you will be encouraged by the messages of hope and practical advice for recovery.
Welcome back, everyone, and thank you so much for taking the time to participate in this year's World Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Day, the second annual World Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Day, and also the second Healing from Narcissistic Abuse Virtual Summit. We're so excited that you're here, and our hope is that you'll walk away with information and with tools, with handles, and be able to navigate your recovery journey with more intentionality and with more wisdom and more knowledge on the topic than you had before you listened. I am your co-host. My name is Athena Moberg, and I'm going to hand this over to your co-host, Bree Bonchet, who is the founder of World Narcissistic Abuse Awareness Day, and she's going to introduce you to our guest speaker today.
Thank you, Athena. Hi, we have Tina Fuller today, and Tina is a certified professional coach. She's the owner of Fuller Life Coaching and the author of the book, It's My Turn. Tina shares her personal experiences and provides her readers with a 4-step healing method called PACE, Protect, Accept, Change, and Empower. As an IPEC certified coach, Tina works one-to-one with clients around the world, providing focused guidance and support on their path to healing. She leads a Facebook support community called Narcissistic Parent Answers with over 38,000 survivors, all validating and supporting one another on their healing journey. Tina is currently working on bringing narcissistic abuse awareness to high school students and a follow-up book to It's My Turn. Tina can be reached via email at tinafuller@mac.com. Thank you, Tina, for joining us today to discuss adult children of narcissistic parents. We're really glad to have you with us.
Hi, Bree. Hi, Athena. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really excited about our conversation.
We're really excited too. Thank you for agreeing to spend some time with us today and just share your experiences and your knowledge and to just reach out to the survivor community and share a message of hope and healing with them. It means a lot to us that you take the time to be here with us.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. I would love for you to share a little bit about your book. I know that our community, Bree's and my community both, there are a lot of books out there. There are a lot of people claiming to know everything there is to know and and giving different programs and steps, etc. But my community specifically, the community I serve are mostly adult survivors of narcissistic parents. So when I was doing research on this particular topic and looking for guest speakers, I ran across so many of your memes and images and inspiring quotes and words of affirmation and basically just virtual coaching. I found you everywhere. So, which is it's what prompted me to reach out to you. And I would love I don't know any adult child of a narcissistic parent who wouldn't be probably thinking the words, when is it going to be my turn? Because perhaps they've been raised in an environment, where it was never ever truly about them when they were children, when they were young, perhaps adolescent years, formative years, etc. It was always about someone else, whether it was about a sibling that happened to be a golden child or ultimately about the narcissistic parent. So how did you get the idea or where did the inspiration come to write this book, It's My Turn, and just share with our audience perhaps some of your experience?
Sure. Well, when I first discovered that my mom was a narcissist, I just dove into every bit of information I could find. And this has been a good probably, it was back in at least 2003 or 4 when I really just started figuring it out. And once I started to understand it, and the anger set in, and then I decided to really just try to understand what happened and why. So I went just on my own journey. There really wasn't as many books out back then as there are now. They're just popping up everywhere, like you said. And part of my book in the beginning, I'm like, there weren't very many books out there, so that's why I'm writing this one. And I truly felt exactly what you said in that I didn't have a say. I didn't have a voice. So once I started really getting on the healing path, I thought, I've got to reach out to others because I'm really growing here and I'm thriving and starting to live my own life. And I always felt my mom, I classify her as a high-range narcissistic mother. And so I thought, I've got to help other people. I've got to write this book. And I actually wrote this one, and it was very angry. And I had to go back and revise the whole thing because I thought, wow, I'm really not helping anybody this way. So I came up with the final draft, and I was thinking, what am I going to call this? It's my turn to live, basically. So that's why I came up with It's My Turn.
Yeah, it's interesting the emails we receive and the comments and just the narratives that we read in our support groups these days. I'll sit back and I'll read something. Invariably I'll get invited into someone's group, and I'll read someone's post, and it's like they were living in my house. And I think that's one of the miraculous things that happens in this community, in Bree's community, as well as in my community, and I'm sure you've seen it in yours. So many people lived in silence for so many years and lived in such shame for so many years because there wasn't really a name for it. There wasn't a name for what it was that was going on. And oftentimes, especially if we're dealing with someone who's covert, there aren't a lot of words to describe it. And if you do try to describe it with words, it's not something you can prove. It sounds petty.
Right. Absolutely.
Death by 1,000 pebbles. Oh yeah, like that person throws one little pebble at you. Oh, it's no big deal. But when it happens over the course of 18 years and you're drowning in little tiny, sharp, ridiculous pebbles and you can't catch your breath and you're suffocating under the weight of 10 tons of little tiny pebbles, like, it's real.
Exactly. Death by 1,000 cuts, right? That's it's really, that's what it is. Yeah. And unfortunately, it's not just the 18 years. Many people, especially a lot of my clients, they're well into their 30s. Some are 50s. I think I've even had one as old as 65. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, and they're just now getting it. So it's really amazing and heartwarming to see the healing process as they go along. And many, as you said, just get it off the memes and things like that, or they message me, and I try to help people anyway, just because I want to. I just have a very huge passion for that. It's not about money. The reason I went into the coaching is because I just wanted to learn more tools, professional tools. And so I went into the coaching training program, which is basically like a 9-month program, hands-on program, and it just was very intense and just gave me more tools to help people to move forward, because that's what it's about. It's really about getting your own identity and moving forward.
Absolutely. And coaching as a modality is so collaborative in nature. And oftentimes people who have survived trauma, when they have someone come alongside them and collaborate with them on their healing journey, all of a sudden they're not alone anymore. They're not alone like they felt for 18, 20, 30 years. And then there's this huge push forward in their healing because they actually have someone rooting for them instead of shredding them and tearing them down.
Exactly. And it's very comforting. At least I just started my business just a few months ago. I graduated in February. So it was a matter of a lot of people are coming to me saying, "Oh, wow, I've been in therapy for 20 years," or what. I'm exaggerating, but for years, and they're like, "Wow, you just answered like so many questions for me," and so I thought this really was the right thing for me to do, is do the coaching. And
That's
they love
wonderful.
having somebody who's who's been through it and gotten to the other side. That's really what I think a lot of my the positive comments that I get back, feedback is, wow, yeah, you give me such hope because you've gotten there. I want to get there, kind of thing. So yeah, it's really important. I think it's they can relate to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest struggles adults that come to you have as in their life from growing up with a narcissistic or narcissistic parents?
A lot of times, once someone finds out about it, they get stuck in anger. That's where most of my clients come to me. They're so angry, or they're so hurt. But one of the biggest things I'm finding is I don't know who I am. Who am I? And that's, it's just a matter because you've been so some have been so micromanaged, some have been just completely neglected. It just depends on the type of narcissistic parent you have. Mine was a micromanager. I couldn't brush my hair correctly. I couldn't make the bed correctly. I mean, I just couldn't make any decisions, and when I did, they were wrong. So it just depends on what type of parent. But yeah, it's pretty much, I don't even know who I am. I don't even know what I want. Where do I go from here? Yeah,
And
they're
that
just like
seems
it's lost.
the byproduct or of
Mhm.
narcissistic abuse is the total loss of self and identity and
Right.
um
Right.
so and how, like, what are some things that can help people who are feeling like that now? um
Yeah, having a support system in place is really key. Um, Having a voice that this really happened to me and acknowledging that this was abuse. This was not just a self-centered person who's annoying. This is a real thing. And so having that support system in place, unfortunately, a lot of times when you realize you have a narcissistic parent and you stand up to them or do what you do to get your independence, you lose the whole family or most of your family. So they feel alone. Now, I've been abused and I'm alone. So it's just a real struggle. But having that support and building self-esteem is key. It's really like almost being born again. You have to almost start from the beginning. You have to make some friends. You have to reach out to others. And it's hard because I hear the same thing over and over. Well, if my own father or my own mother couldn't love me, how is anybody else going to care for me? And that's kind of what's branded in your brain a little bit. And we have to undo that damage because there are loving people out there. Not everybody is out to get you.
mhm.
So walk us through how you would help someone get through that with your PACE, with your program that you
Right.
teach in your book. If they have a total loss of self, if my own father couldn't love me, told me I was a mistake, he told me I was a failure, he said I would never amount to anything, get out of here, I don't want to look at your face. I mean, I get people that write me and that's the only message they've ever heard. So
Wow.
there's
Yeah.
a gentleman in your office, he's reaching out, he's finally reaching out for help for the first time ever, and that's exactly what he's going through. How would you help him get through what he's gone through using your program that you talk about in your book?
Okay, well, let me just go over a little bit. That would be, like I said, it's PACE. So that would be that actual issue would fall under accept, the A, because first of all, if they're going to find their individuality, you need to protect yourself. Many people struggle with having contact. Should I have contact? Should I not have contact? Some people are not to a point where they can say, okay, I need to go no contact, but let me start with low contact first and kind of ease myself out because there's a lot of fear there. There's a lot of fear they're going to be chastised or ostracized from the family. So that particular issue, first I talk about protecting yourself emotionally, like putting up, you can imagine you have a rubber suit on, or you can imagine there's a cement wall between the two of you, and any of their insults are going to bounce off. They're not going to come in. I'm not going to allow them in. It goes deeper than that, but because we're on a time schedule here, I'm just going to briefly go over it. Accepting the fact that your parent is a narcissist, and you have the right to be happy. You have the right to have peace in your life. So part of healing is accepting that they have a disorder, and it's not your fault. You didn't ask for this. You didn't cause it. It's none of this is your fault. But what is your responsibility is to move forward and heal from this, because you can. And then the C is change. Unfortunately, you're the one who's had the abuse. They cannot change. So the only thing we can control and change is ourself. We can change how we interact with them, not interact with them, setting boundaries, and that type of thing. So you have to change what you're doing in order to heal. And lastly would be empower yourself, which would be building your self-esteem, going out, getting that support group, that friend, that whatever it is that will help support you in your healing journey. Could be therapy, it could be coaching, it could be a group of friends, it could be a support group. Whatever it is that you're going to empower yourself that's going to keep you going and healing, so you can get to healing.
Thank you. Thank you for walking us through that so succinctly.
Okay.
There are a lot of people in our community reaching out and gathering information for the very first time. And I receive, touching on what you just shared about protect, accept, change, and empower. I've had clients get stuck with acceptance, and they're, for all intents and purposes, begging me, Athena, tell me that I don't have to really accept what's happened to me. I can't fully accept the reality of what's happened to me, because if I do, it will mean this, 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 and this. And it's, and I sit with them through that, obviously, but I mean, you get this oftentimes as well. I'm sure that when you are working with a client on accepting the reality that they were actually abused, and perhaps this is only for the adults who grew up with narcissistic parents, and not necessarily adults who are only involved in interpersonal relationships with adults, like with narcissists in adulthood, like romantically. But for children, when I have a client basically begging me, tell me, Athena, that I can still heal if I don't fully accept what's happened to me, because I can't fully accept it. They are in a hard stance of refusing to accept the reality of their abuse, because if so-and-so abused me and so-and-so was there, so-and-so knew about it, and then so-and-so knew, and everybody knew, and everybody kept silent, and there's this code of silence, and there's all the sisters, all the brothers, all the cousins, all the aunts, uncles, neighbors, teacher, everybody knew, and no one did anything. The visual picture I get is when you choose to accept the reality of your abuse, it's like pulling on one string and the entire sweater unraveling in a puddle of yarn at the bottom of your feet. Your whole world crashes down around you, because it's not one instance. So for someone who's coming to you and they're struggling and they're really stuck on accepting the reality of their abuse, I'm thinking of a particular gentleman who has reached out in our community recently. I mean, he was stuck, unable to accept the reality of his abuse for probably a couple of years. It's only been recently. There's freedom in that. Now, can you share perhaps something that you've been able to perhaps share a success story or something inspiring with the listeners who perhaps are stuck and they're unable to accept the reality of their abuse? How would you recommend, or how would you help them through that, or sit with them through that?
Yeah, I can think of one time I had someone who was stuck in that spot, and I think just the hearing over and over that it is not their fault. And what I mean by accept it is not, this is where some of the confusion does come in, at what I found, is people think they have to accept the abuse and accept that this happens to them. And what I try to tell them, I say, it's not that you have to accept the abuse. You have to accept the fact that your parent has a disorder, and it's not going to change. No matter what amount of rationale you try to use with them, it's not going to affect anything. Um, if if you have proof that they've done something completely wrong, I don't care if you have it on video, they will blame and put the responsibility on someone else. So accepting that it's not your fault and realizing you were abused. And I kind of keep reiterating that. And eventually, it doesn't happen overnight, but eventually in allowing them to vent and hearing that it wasn't their fault, because unfortunately that is very common for adult children of narcissists to feel, well, if I'd only done this better, if I'd only been a better son or better daughter, then this wouldn't be this way. It would be better. No, it's not going to be better. So just reiterating and walking through some of that pain with them and validating, acknowledging what they've been through. Yes, that's abuse. It helps them to accept it.
Mm. Just calling it what it is. I know Bree, when you and I were talking with Richard the first time, like a couple of years ago on that in 2015.
Yeah.
Remember in the very, very beginning, we were talking about like the importance of calling abuse abuse. And it's something so simple. I mean, hello, it's like, yeah, of course that's what I think his comment was, well, to the narcissist, it's, a car is a car. Oh, water is water. Oh, a bumblebee is a bumblebee. It's like, to us, calling abuse abuse is a really, really, really difficult thing because because the gaslighting and the grooming that goes into the being raised in a narcissistic home causes us to not believe that what really happened.
Exactly.
So,
And it becomes your norm, really. And
yeah.
people don't realize that they've actually been through abuse. And when it does sink in, it's like ding, 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 ding. Oh my gosh, I really have been abused, because a lot of people will look at abuse and think, oh, okay, well, that means you've been hit, you've been, physically abused. It's not the same. The scars are on the inside.
What I hear too, kind of just making that even more difficult to accept and call abuse abuse, is adult children. If the other children in the family were treated better, and then they're also saying, well, you weren't
Right.
abused, and that just,
Exactly.
yeah, it just makes it all
Yeah.
the harder when the family, there's nobody in the family supporting you or saying that did happen to you, or you have a right to feel that way.
Absolutely. And then what happens on top of that, then it's like, well, wait, maybe I am wrong. Maybe I'm making more out of this than it really is. And they try to gaslight and make you the crazy one. And that's not what's going on. And that's why I one of the first things I do with clients is I find out their family dynamic. Is there anybody they can reach out to? And in my book, I've got it basically broken down to 3 general categories, which are the conforming child, which is the conformer, a rebel, or a runner. And I'll briefly go over that. The conformer is the child that is completely enmeshed with the mother or father, and they try to please the parent as much as possible. They will protect and defend them to the end of the earth, and even lie for them. They pick up a lot of the parent's traits, and they will just, like I said, completely defend and protect them. The rebel is the child who's trying to stand up to some of this, what I call programming, and they will try to be independent. And they're the ones that are usually fighting all the time with the parent because they are trying to be who they are. And there's a lot of arguing going back and forth. And then there's the runner, who is the person who just kind of says, okay, I'm out. I can't deal with this person. They're just crazy. And so, I'm a firm believer you need to focus on the pain and the damage, or running away is kind of like a Band-Aid, if you will, and it does help. I'm not saying it doesn't, and it also aids you in healing because you're not in the drama and chaos. But those are kind of the three areas. And if I find out where their siblings fall, okay, which one could you potentially reach out for help, or that may agree with you? And then you can work together and help each other. And that's really worked well for me in helping others to heal, because sometimes they figure, well, I have this conformer sister. Okay, she's not going to help you. She's not going to help you, because they're usually the golden child.
Right.
The runner and the rebel are usually the ones that will be helpful in supporting each other. And then, of course, the conformer, it's kind of like they just get so dysfunctional with the parent. I mean, for example, I have an older half sister who's like 77 now, and it's like she's still like the seal with trying to balance the ball on her nose. It's just sad to see. And they just become so enmeshed with the parent, they don't see the dysfunction.
Right. Right. And they actually, as they get older, well, even in childhood, or I would say adolescence, they sort of can be the ones that also carry out the abuse.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they become the little soldier and pick up many of the traits. They aren't necessarily narcissistic, but they do pick up. It's like they've got to carry the torch, and well, this is what the parent would have wanted, so I've got to keep doing this. I have to keep the parade going, so to speak.
Right.
Exactly.
I've seen that dynamic play out in several families, actually. I mean, the carrying of the torch, as you put it.
Yeah.
And it's painful to watch, but identifying that that's even a thing or that's even a problem is kind of a huge step, because a lot of people will not even, they're so deep in it, they don't even realize they're carrying the torch. Like, I know that you have it categorized as conformers or rebels or runners. There are some people in certain families of origin that I have had the benefit or the privilege of working with. You've probably had this as well, or you'll have this in your private practice, and that is, you'll think someone is the rebel or the runner and that you can confide in them, and then out of nowhere you realize that they've leaked all of your healing secret to the whole family.
Exactly.
And then everybody pounces on the scapegoat. I had that happen with a client where they honestly, truly thought they could confide in their sister, because their sister was always the loving one, the caring one, the deep, deep, compassionate one. And then the moment they confided, the moment the brother confided in the sister, all of a sudden the parents knew everything, and they called him out on the carpet. Like, what's this I hear? Well, oh, you poor thing. And then they mocked him sort of publicly. And it was just so devastating to hear. And, that's hard to unwind. That's really hard to get past when this, this whole tribe, right? It's a very tribal situation that happens when all of a sudden the entire tribe, jumps on and tries to destroy one of their own. And it's just, for many adult children of narcissistic parents to get out alive and to live a full life, it seems unattainable to them, but we want you guys to know that it's not. We've seen, a lot of amazing progress. Tina, I would love for you to share about some of the brave men that have stepped up in your community, even just recently. I mean, I've noticed the male population of survivors of narcissistic abuse really beginning to speak up and reach out and truly heal. And I hadn't seen that in the previous. I've only been focused specifically on working a lot with people who have had narcissistic parents, probably for the past 3 or 4, probably about 3 years. But this year, 2017, just in the last few months, the first half of the, not even the first half of the year, first 5 months, I've noticed more men stepping up and healing and reaching out and helping others, being like stepping up to leadership roles in communities and helping other people heal and being a voice for change. Can you talk a little bit about the brave men in your community and what you've seen?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have seen the same exact thing. That's really funny. This year particularly, I've seen more and more men stepping up, and whether it's for themselves or even their own child, because a good point to make as well is that unfortunately, it is rather common for an adult child of a narcissist to get into another relationship, like a spouse or what have you, with a narcissist, because it's that familiarity that, just comes out, and it's like the devil kind of thing. But I've literally had some really brave fathers contact me, ask me about my book. I really want to read this, and I want to help my daughter. I've had several of those. I've had several men bravely come to me and ask me, well, I have a narcissistic mother, and I always start off with, I commend them on their bravery, because and this may be an assumption, but it may be emasculating for them to admit, okay, my mother's controlling me. And so it really takes a lot of guts to stand up to that and say, this is what's happening to me. And I'm hearing and seeing that they're really reaching out, trying to get more information. What really is narcissism? How has it affected me? And then they're concerned. What if I have kids, or what's going to happen to my kids? Should I keep them away from them? And it's been a wonderful, wonderful increase in men stepping up and really just putting it out there and say, hey, this did happen. This is a real thing, and how can I help my kid, or what can I do to help myself? You're right. It takes a lot of strength.
It does. Takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, yeah. I've noticed it as well, and I'm really glad for that, because I really think it's showing that possibly that we're it's just becoming, we're speaking about it more, and so that they're becoming more and more comfortable to say, yeah, this happened to me, and what do I do now? And it's a good sign, I think, as far as as far as showing how much more we're talking about this.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
the more that's out there, the more information people can get their hands on, the better they are. And a lot of people have come to me, even with my Facebook page, they're like, well, why is your page open? It should be closed. And I always respond with, but if I close it, then people who are desperate, like I was when I first started, who may just be searching for one little thing, they can get it.
Right.
I've also had people kind of come out on my page where they started off, one was a man actually, they started off, they were living at home with their parent and realized eventually over time, and they would check in once in a while with me, over time, oh, I can't post, I make a fake name so they can't know it's me, and they come out on the page, this is so-and-so now, they use their real name and their real Facebook page, because they've gotten so strong. I literally, and this is really funny, but I literally got a message with a picture of a U-Haul truck, and I'm like, yes, So, and it was just such a heartwarming feeling to see, okay, they've made it out of there. They've gotten out, and it was just such an exciting moment to see that. And they sent that to me, and I was just like jumping up and down for excitement for them,
Absolutely. It takes a lot of courage. I've just like Bree mentioned, and like you're talking about, I have had men actually speak out for the very, very, very first time. And, touching on what you mentioned, many of them started with fake profiles on Facebook to get into our support groups. And then out of nowhere, I get this private message. Hi, Athena, it's me.
Exactly.
And this is really me. And so could you welcome me back into the group or whatever? I want to just, because what was happening was there's this band of brothers that are all together, like healing, and they felt duplicitous. They felt like, you know what? I really want these brave men that I've been healing with to know who I really am. I really just
Oh,
want them to know the real me. And I don't want
wow.
I feel like I'm turning into my abusive, weird parent who is
Mhm.
covert in all these different ways by not just being authentic. And to have the courage to step out authentically and be vulnerable like that,
Mhm.
it takes a while, and it takes a lot of courage and a lot of
It does.
strength. So
Absolutely.
anyway,
Absolutely.
it's worth celebrating, I think, because
Absolutely.
Tina,
um
I wanted to ask you, I read something you wrote, and sort of the U-Haul truck kind of made me think of it. So,
Mhm.
people, they get the courage to leave an abusive, toxic situation. And then something you wrote was, don't let go of the anger toward your parent. Can you share a
Don't
little bit
let
about
go of
that?
the anger. I'm not familiar with that one actually.
Oh, okay. It was about like a metaphor for touching a hot stove.
Oh, okay. No, I was saying that okay, I'm trying to remember how this went now. Um if you if in other words, if you touch a hot stove, you're going to get burned. Don't go back. Don't keep going back looking for something you're not going to get. If you got burned the first time, you're not going to go back and touch that hot stove again because you learned a lesson. So don't keep going to an empty well. I believe that's the one you're referring to.
Right.
Um, yeah, because once you get burned, and if you keep going back to it, you're going to still get burned. It's not going to change. So, yeah, I think that's the one you're referring to.
yeah,
Right.
that can be really difficult for a lot of survivors,
Mhm.
because again, we're talking about the dissonance. There's such
Mhm.
dissonance. They are programmed to remember the good times. They are programmed to
Mhm.
remember the idealization of who their narcissist proclaims they are, and the memories that
Mhm.
they manufacture, the manufactured
Mhm.
memories. And
Mhm.
don't you remember the time we did this, and don't you remember the time we did that? And then here, uh Tina, I know you and I have briefly spoke off the air. Bree, I've
Mhm.
talked with you about this several times, and that is that a lot of the adult survivors of narcissistic parents that I've had the privilege of working with are they go straight from confusion to
Mhm.
compassion, and they skip
Mm.
over the anger. And it's likely to do with the fact that almost 100% of the clients I have, not 100%, but a high percentage,
Mhm.
90 percentile of the clients I have had are adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. Sexual abuse was something that was part of their narcissistic abuse during childhood, whether that be
Mhm.
through being sexually abused by a sibling or by a mother or a father. There was sexual abuse
Yeah.
involved. And so
Mhm.
when when they move from confusion, why did this happen to me? Why me? Why are uh, why are they kind and loving to my siblings or to other people, but to me they're not? I'm so confused. Why am I not lovable? Why am I not worth loving? Why wasn't I worth protecting? Why?
Mhm.
They're so confused. And then they start to feel just a little bit of anger, and
Mhm.
it's
Mm.
terrifying to them because perhaps they came from an overtly narcissistic upbringing where rage was something that was involved, and so they have deemed from the time they were
Mhm.
small, anger equals bad, anger equals
Right.
abuse, and so they shove
Right.
that anger somewhere else where it can't ever be found, and they move immediately to compassion. Well,
Mm.
they came from a bad home, they're doing the best they can, and they
Mhm.
begin repeating all the words that have been said to them, like, I've
Mhm.
done the best I could. I was abused as a child. You don't even know what abuse is like.
Right.
You'll never know what hunger is like because I went through this and I lived through the
Mhm.
Great Depression, and you
Mhm.
don't know, and there's
Mhm.
which the narcissist is famous for doing. They'll
Mhm.
take your
Absolutely.
reality and they
Mhm.
will minimize it to where it is completely invisible while they project all of their pain onto you so that it looks
Absolutely.
huge and that anything you've been through looks insignificant.
Right. It's just totally diminished. I mean, yeah, exactly. You can go to them with a problem,
Yeah.
and before you know it, it's flipped around where you're
Yeah.
consoling them.
You flip the
That's
script.
the whole point. They have to be the focus of attention, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah,
That's
well,
just
what Bree
very.
brought into the light was the meme that she was referring to about don't forget your anger. I mean, that's hugely, hugely, hugely helpful for any adult survivor of narcissistic parents who moves straight from the confusion. Why did this happen to me? Why was I abused? Why me? I don't understand. What did I do wrong? Maybe I could have been better. Maybe I could have whatever. And then they skip over their anger because they're afraid of it. They maybe weren't allowed to feel it. And they move straight
Right.
into, well, I'm probably being really hard on them. They really did do the best they could. How would they have known how to parent me? They weren't parented well. So
Right. That's
for anyone out
Yeah.
there who's been through that situation, please don't forget your anger. If you can somehow access that anger anywhere, if you can find it deep, 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 deep. And for me personally, and Tina, I know I briefly shared this with you, I wasn't able to access my anger. Not until I was in my late 30s. Late 30s. I raged at my own child when I was in my 20s, realized I had a problem, got help, and never touched my anger again, not surrounding anything, not my upbringing, not anything. And then all of a sudden, I got in touch with my anger. Wish I would have had your meme back then. Goodness gracious. And the only thing I was angry about is that someone else was being abused. Someone else was being done wrong. And then I got in touch with it and I was like, wow, I'm angry about this injustice. Why can't I feel that about my own abuse? And that was
right.
sort of a light bulb moment for me, like a catalyst.
And that's also, you mentioned about having the other family members and such, and that's why I try to bring people back to that acceptance stage, because and understanding where their siblings fit into this, because of course one child's going to be favored. Well, that's probably the either the golden child or the conformer who is feeding the narcissist their supply. So I try to explain to them and have them understand that narcissists don't really love them any more than they love you. They don't love anybody. They just use people. And if you give them what they want, you're going to get a fake pat on the head, so to speak. But if they were to stand up for themselves, they'd be out on the street as well. They'd have to have somebody else to fill that supply. That's all it is. There's no real bond there. And it's just how you fit into the family dynamic. Your brother or sister is not better than you. They're not more lovable. You're just as lovable. It's the parent's issue, not you. And I always
Right.
try to bring it back around to that, to help them to get through it. No, she doesn't or he doesn't love your sister more than you or your brother more than you. It's their disorder. And so I try to get in that acceptance and understanding about the family dynamics.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
definitely powerful.
the way parents, narcissistic parents choose, which child is the good one, the golden one, and which one isn't is so arbitrary. It's it could be because you were born on an even numbered day. So
Exactly. Or for example, for me, when I was born, I had a kidney problem. I don't know what it was. I got a kidney infection of some sort. I was born. My mom was very much older than she should have been to have a child, but I had kidney issues, and so I was labeled the weak one, and that stuck with me for a long time. And then as I grew, it was, well, you don't takes you a while to catch on to things, but boy, you're bullheaded, and if you really want to do something, it may take you a little longer than average, but you'll get it, kind of. And it's like, okay, so now I'm slow too. It's like,
Oh my goodness.
and I can laugh about it now, but growing up when you're 5, 6, 7 years old, it's very damaging, because am I mentally challenged? Is that what you're telling me? And that's what I really believed. Something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There must be
until I
something
figured
wrong
it out.
with me. There must be something wrong with me.
Exactly. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. It's never enough. Well,
Yeah.
it's never going to be enough because you're an empty bucket and with a hole in it. So you keep filling it, the water's going to continue to run out. because they can't be filled.
Yeah. Well, I would love for you. Thank you so much for sharing so much of your time with us and your personal
Oh, sure.
story. And just, I'm excited for people to purchase your book, find you online, join your community, receive the support they so deserve. Can you
Sure.
share with the listeners the best possible way to get plugged in to a safe community of other survivors?
You mean my community or?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah, my Facebook page is called Narcissistic Parent Answers. And again, it does have almost 38,000 people on there. And if you want to get in touch with me directly, my email is tinafuller@mac.com, and it's small letters. Or if you are interested in doing some coaching, you can go to Fuller Life Coaching, or you can go to, it's called narcissism-answers.com, which will bring you to Fuller Life Coaching. It's all the same website.
Wonderful. Thank you
Okay.
so much, Tina, for your time and just for your passion and your enthusiasm about raising awareness about the profile of narcissistically abusive individuals, and just for your part during this second annual World Narcissistic Abuse Awareness
Yes.
Day. Thank you so
And
much.
thank you so much for having me. Was so excited to be on here today.
Thank you, Tina. We're excited
Okay.
to be on. I was just going to add that for everybody listening, I know we just scratched the surface. There's like so much more we could talk about on this topic if we had time, but I'm hoping that now that people can find you and find resources and hear some of the things that you shared, and if it resonates with them, can heal, can start their
Sure.
healing journey. So thank you so much for being
Oh,
here.
and thank you. Thank you so much for having me.